So how high, how low? It really is a volatile time, and I'm just going to give a summary of some of the trends. I'm not going to poach on the turf of upcoming speakers. I'm just going to give some background material here. There's many things I could talk about. Let me see, I'm going to have to turn around over here so I can see the screen. Okay. Oh, well, that's too, my eyes are not that good. Even though I had the bionic eyes, I did have okay, never mind. So the demographic trends, they really are highly political, and that's what makes it so exciting to policymakers. But what should we measure? What benchmarks do we compare? And what interpretations do we draw? This is always an open question, open to debate. And the demographic trends are bipartisan, I maintain. When I go to Washington, I talk about it as bipartisan because everybody has age and aging, and everybody has kids. Everybody has kids in their family. Everybody, you know, it's really cross-cutting. And I think that the demographic trends can divide us, and it can also connect us together. And I'm going to be making that point as a broader framework around my remarks. So why are demographic trends being recognized today is so important? Well, the future consumers, workers, transportation users, housing occupants, taxpayers, all come out of people. It's people who do these things, modified and assisted by income. Income doesn't drive cars. People drive cars. People live in houses. It's lost sight of by economists, of course. They think their models are income, modified by demographic characteristics. But this is a demographic view. At root, you have to fill up space with people. So that we can look at differences between different groups of people. I mean, look at disparities, gaps, and that is a critical view that's useful on trends. But the critical view doesn't actually lead directly to solutions. In a political world, I think we need to do the third approach, which is look at people as social assets, and with connections between people and the mutual benefits that can be built. And that is a pro-social view on trends that can lead to cooperation in a democracy, which is really where we need to get to more of these days. So the demographics can be played all these different ways, and that's why you see so many different interpretations. So how many ways can the demographics changing? This is my one slide. It shows you the overview. Boom. There's growth in the middle, and it's based on children, it's based on aging, racial change, and migration. All that goes together. And you can slice it and dice it many different ways, but they really, and we won't do all these today, but we can quickly touch on it all. So the growth outlook really has been changing. Now here I am poaching a little bit on Ethan Sherrigan, who's going to be talking later, the next panel, and he's in charge of the forecasting. But it has been changing, and the forecasts keep changing. So here is a look at the growth of California population. It's the same trend for Southern California and for LA County, and for Orange County, all the big counties. And you see the census trend upward. There is the projections that were expected in 2007 by the Department of Finance. And then they revised it in 2012, and revised it again in 2014, and revised it again in 2017. This is the 2014 revision. And you see it's a little bit different. It's still going up, right? Well, I figured out one way to look at it, how to show you just how big a change this is. This change is unheralded. I want to ask a question. In what year will California reach 50 million people? Under the old expectations in 2007 projections, we get there in 2031. The new projections, I looked them up, this is 2017 version projections, we don't get there until 2055. And if I do the math right, that's virtually a quarter-century delay, a quarter-century slowdown in us getting to 50 million. That has huge benefits and also challenges that there's not enough growth there. But we can catch up, at least, on our past growth where we were falling behind, developing necessary infrastructure and services. So some of that slowdown could be due to fertility decline, but that's the next panel, so I'm not going to step on that. It could be due. We'll find out. And migration and immigration really have radically shifted. And I want to look at that in some more detail, and then in a really open-ended question, what comes next. I should say that for the last 3 years, I served on a panel of the National Academy of Sciences on the economic and fiscal consequences of immigration. Our report was so slow being developed that it spread over 2 years. It was officially released last fall in 2016, and the book, the hard copy, was only released like 2 weeks ago. So I could say it just came out, but you can get it online for free, the National Academy of Sciences. So I can draw on some of that in my remarks here, but there's a lot of things. So first, looking at our trends in immigration, people usually don't react to the level, they react to the trend. People in Alabama flip out if there's a 2% increase in immigrants. California, we've got 27%. What are you talking about? But it really is the level. So here's the flow of newcomers in the U.S. compared to 1970. The flow compared to what was the normal, quote unquote, normal in 1970, it really escalated to a peak around 2000 and then declined in California, in the U.S. Here's the California flow relative to 1970, and we peaked. The Golden State peaked earlier, peaked in 1990. Because of our deep recession, we turned the corner and headed downward. Los Angeles County, where we are today, also peaked the same time point and has rolled way, 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 way back. And at least as of 2010, much less inflow. Now, that's just the long-range view up to 2010. And I know you want to know, well, what's happening today? I can't tell you today because Armando Mendoza's census, this won't give us data for today, but we can get data for 2015, and we can get data for every single year. My assistant, Jung Ho Park, has assembled some data annually, and we'll look at the trends for each year. But first I have to give you this. This is like, before was the flow, and this is the level. What percentage of the population is foreign-born? And you see how it rapidly rose in California and in LA County and has leveled off. And we projected, as my colleague John Pickett and I projected this in 2001, before the census results came out, that it would be leveling off, and it has, in fact, done so. And we think it's going to hold pretty steady going forward. Not growing, not shrinking, but maintaining a high level. The U.S. is still catching up. By the way, California's percent foreign-born, it's never discussed on the East Coast. They ignore this. We actually have more immigrant population, more foreign-born population than any other large country in the world. More than Canada, more than Australia, and we have a higher percentage foreign-born in California than Canada or Australia. We are the capital of immigration, and if you want to know how it works, we can show you how it works. And places that are just learning about it, they don't really want to look at California. They have a very strange Hollywood view of us. So there's a lot to be learned. But let's look at the annual trend, because the big thing that's obviously the big gorilla in the room is what's happened with the Great Recession, which really slowed down, really stopped the U.S. economy for a few years. We're recovering now. Now we have some policy questions that are opening up. So let's look at the annual trend. And so here it is. First, we'll look at the U.S. This is relative to 2010, which is the last data point from the previous slide. This is the number of new arrivals, foreign-born non-citizens who lived abroad last year. And in the American Community Survey, so each year from 2006 through 2015. And you see how it slumped in the U.S. during the recession years. 2010 was near the bottom. And then it's risen. In the last couple of years, it's really starting to uptick in the U.S. Here's the California trend. California, it dropped more abruptly, and it's rebounded more steeply. I think we have the Skag region next, which is very similar to the California region, because Skag is so big, it's a lot big. It's more than half of the state. And then I have some of the big counties. So there's I think it's LA County in the red, big drop, big decline, and big rebound. And then we have Orange County, which is the blue, And then we have Riverside, which is, I couldn't do San Bernardino because it was too volatile to really graph it. And you see Riverside's already pretty volatile also, but Riverside's really dropped further and then is really shooting back upward. So it is rising, but it's rising from a very, very low level and not really getting higher than it was in 2006 in our region. So the immigration trend has many consequences. And I'm just going to look at a few of these here quickly. First off, what about kids? I'm going to poach into the kid area just to say one thing. Look at the far right-hand side of this graph. Here's all 50 states, but the right-hand side is the U.S. average. 1/4 of all the school-aged children have immigrant parents. 1/4. And you know, school-aged kids are expensive. We really don't want those because we can't afford them. Here's California over here on the left, the Golden State. 52% of all the school-age kids, public and private combined, have immigrant parents. It's really big numbers. The black bars there are kids that are actually foreign-born themselves. Most of them are second-generation kids that were born in this country of immigrant parents. So it's a big factor in education and potentially in local economies, local fiscal economies. So let's look at it in a little more detail here. This is the changes in the racial share of the newcomers to the SCAG region, Southern California region, and the Latino share of newcomers being defined as people who arrived in the last 5 years, has really tailed off after 2005. It dropped way down. And you have Asian is rising, and also the non-Hispanic white group is rising. You know, realize that white includes Armenian, Iranian, North African, Middle Eastern, Australian, Canada. It's really a very broad category. But more important than this, we discovered in a National Academy study, it's not the racial makeup at all. It's what education level are your new immigrants. So I want to show you that result, side by side. And you see that we've had a big decline in the number of immigrants with less than a high school degree, a steep decline. That steep decline parallels somewhat the decline in Latinos, but if I can just point out one thing here is this decline, the Latino decline was very slight right here, but we already had a steep decline in the less than high school degree category. So the Latinos are better and better educated also. It's not constant. But that changing educational mix is important for several reasons. Well, I'll just show you right away. This is from the National Academy of Science report by age, and we see that people who are young are really expensive. It's a net loss. We're losing money. Every kid is expensive, no matter if they're immigrant or native born. And then they're again in middle age, and then they're expensive again in old age. But now, by education level, here it is on the left side is the first generation, those are the foreign-born. The right side is the second generation children of immigrants. And the ones who have the highest education are big gainers. And this is the less than high school education. And that's the ones that have the least positive tax impacts. And all the kids, these don't have education. These are the parents. Their parents' education is how they're coded here. And all the kids are equally expensive. And so what we see is if you have a more educated inflow, you will have big benefits tax-wise. Now, the trends are already changing. We already have a shifting education mix. And you might say that means that, well, I mean, it's going to be mixed up a little bit in new policies from the Trump administration. They might change the visa categories and go more towards skills-based and away from family reunification. And then whatever changes happen, they'll claim credit for it. But I just want you to know, the skills mix was already changing. It's been changing since 2000 at least. And it's not because of a policy change that it's going to occur next year. It was already happening. Okay, so let me just quickly move along to finish this. Meanwhile, aging is continuing. It's unstoppable. So in the background, you always have aging as the big factor. Here's the growth in the last 20 years. The green cohorts, I've shown this before in this same conference. The green cohorts, the baby boomers. That was the growth in the last 20 years. The next 20 years, lo and behold, it's rocket science. Everybody's 20 years older, and so the growth is over age 65 now. There's not a lot of growth coming behind. There's a really question mark about who the new workers are. Maybe they're going to be supplemented by robots. We'll talk about that later today. But it's a really different picture than what it was before. Here's the rising senior ratio, which is the number of elderly divided by working age, and it was constant for a long time, and it's taking off. It's taking off in every state. Orange County, every county. Orange County is the poster child. It's getting really old. It used to be really young, all families with kids, and now it's going to be, they're worried about becoming like Santa Barbara. Expensive, no kids can live there. So this is really our planning context. So it's really a homegrown revolution. And I just had this new graph. I got to show this, my last big graph. This is the percentage of people by age who are native Californians. Old people, not so much. And young people, a lot. Here's the percent who are born in some other state. How many people here are born elsewhere in the U.S., not California? All right, see, you guys are all old, see, this category up there. The big migration to California stopped after 1990, so you guys probably all came before 1990, didn't you? I came in 88, all right, well. And then here's the foreign-born share, which is really, the peak age group for that is this 35-44, I think, right? Is that it there? And the point is this, of our young workers, the majority now are native Californians. In the future, it'll be even bigger. But that's what we are in 2015. We're already there. So we are dependent now on our own homegrown. And this is my last slide. This is my model of how it all works. This is how it's bipartisan and how it integrates. Is that, yeah, kids are expensive. Kids grow up, become the new workers and taxpayers, new consumers. They get to be middle-aged and make maximum tax contributions. And then everybody gets to advance to the next stage in life and get their entitlements when they get older. And we're all tied together here. Now that we have a homegrown population, we are actually going through this cycle more completely than we did before. So that is completes my remarks to start off. So thank you.